Hello and welcome to the live series Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals from multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you join us on Facebook, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to stay updated with content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and today we're discussing budgeting for the Bacchanal, Trinidad Carnival. Our guest today is Christopher. He is currently the Managing Director of Diamond Insurance Services Limited and Paragon Financial Consultants Limited at Sagicor Life Insurance in Trinidad and Tobago. He's also an avid supporter of Manchester United Football Club, and that's a conversation that, it might bring down a lot of people, so we're not going to touch on that just yet. He also has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Social Sciences and an MBA in Finance. Christopher is qualified on 6 occasions for the prestigious $1 Million Roundtable Award, which is a pinnacle of achievement in sales in life insurance industry. So we want to bring in this conversation because it's so relevant. How are you today, Christopher?
I'm fine, Pauline. Thank you very much, and welcome to all the listeners who are online and the viewers who are online.
So one thing I forgot to ask you in our test session is how to pronounce your last name correctly, because I want to do it justice. So can you tell me how to pronounce your last name?
It's simple. It's Gouveia, and it's the
Gouveia.
Right. It's the Portuguese version of Gouveia. The Spanish version is Gouvia. The Portuguese version has all the vowels. Gouveia. A-E-I-O-U. We're in there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that, Christopher Gouveia. And I love the fact that we start this conversation with Portuguese because, Trinidad and Tobago is a mixture of so many things, culture-wise, music-wise, food-wise. And it's very, very easy to get caught up in the wave that exists every single year called Carnival. Yes. So when it comes to thinking about Carnival, outside of the revelry and your friends who are obviously trying to run away from the snow, what's the first thing or piece of advice would you give to somebody when it comes to, as much as it's a very enjoyable time, it could be stressful when it comes to managing your finance? What's the first piece of advice would you give to someone financially?
Well, before I even get into that advice, we need to place Carnival in context. Carnival comes right after a major holiday season for all of us, which is Christmas. And we know how we love to celebrate Christmas. And there's a lot of expenditure that goes on during the Christmas season, which for some of us, it might incur debt that we now have to manage and pay off going forward. So that's the first thing we need to understand. So when you have 2 major expenditure seasons following back to back, holidays, Christmas into Carnival, that speaks loudly to the need for budgeting. You've got to budget both your expenditures in the holiday season, which you're going to have to deal with, flowing straight into the expenditures in the Carnival season. So you've got to set a budget. And that budget is going to be dependent on, of course, your level of income, the kind of shows, fetes that you want to participate in. Are you a mass player? Do you take part in Gouveia? Do you go to Panorama? Because Carnival has so many facets. Do you go to the Calypso tents? So you have to sit and plan what are the most important events for you in the Carnival season. Clearly, unless you're in that category of persons who their incomes are so substantial that they can more or less attend everything in Carnival. And the joke about it, as a friend of mine said, is that those guys, the ones who are in the highest level of income, a lot of them don't have to pay for a lot of the things in Carnival. They get complimentaries to go to the big fetes and the big shows and that kind of thing because people want them there. So that's the very first thing I would say off the bat. Oh, no pun intended.
Pun was welcomed.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because Carnival is associated with this fun time,
Yes.
and one will say budgeting like that's not part of the fun. But we budget for travel, right? We budget for, okay, this is
Ah,
the airport, this is. So what would you say to somebody who's like watching this and like, who wants to talk about budgeting and Carnival? What would you
yeah.
say to that person?
Yeah, I would say to that person, the very first thing that you just said, you took the words out of my mouth. When you're going on vacation, do you budget for going on vacation? Because you've got to look at your travel and the hotel and wherever you're going to be attending, what are some of the expenditures that you, and the answer would be yes. We all budget to go on vacation. So Carnival has to fit into that same mold, because not everybody participates in Carnival. In fact, a lot of people go on vacation during Carnival. So Carnival has to fit into that mold where you have to determine going forward that you will still be able to meet all your important expenses and expenditures even after you factored in what you are going to be spending on Carnival. So you have to budget. You have to know how much am I comfortably able to spend during Carnival and still be able to manage my finances going forward, paying my rent, my mortgage, my cable, my food, my insurance policies, my bank loans, my annuities, whatever it is, makes up your financial responsibilities. You've got to make sure that you can meet those. And the best way to do that is to have an idea of how much you're going to spend during the carnival season. And I think any reasonable person, if you explain it to them like that, they will say, yes, you're right. I do need to budget because I don't want to get into financial difficulties because everybody now knows about credit scores and all that kind of stuff. And we don't want to be having bad credit scores going forward.
So, can you elaborate on that with credit stores? Because I usually see it associated with in the States, it's so important a credit store align with what you're able
Yes.
to take out as a loan. So
Yeah.
for the layman folks, the folks
Yeah.
who, like me, need it in simplification, what is a
Yes.
credit score?
Right. So your credit score, simply in layman's term, says how reliable are you at paying off your debts, right? Because all of us, when we go to the bank, we know that there's a form, whether it's a bank or it's a credit union or whatever it is, there's a form that you have to fill out that says, okay, yes, my information, you're going to be able to check with the persons who look at your loans and are able to say how many payments you've missed or if you are on track for paying all your loans. And once you are that kind of person who doesn't miss payments, your credit score is going to be very high, all right? But if you are the kind of person that consistently misses your payments, whatever those payments are, that information is going to be known to the agency that collects it. And you're going to have a credit score rating, which then determines whether or not that financial institution is willing to extend a loan facility to you.
Such important information that we don't necessarily learn sometimes until it's too late. And
Exactly.
yeah, that person includes me. And that's why the show is so
And
important.
me,
I've learned
and me.
Exactly. I've learned so much from the show, and I also fell into the trap of, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that because we're living in a world now where social media is like YOLO, you only live life once.
Yes.
Um, there's self care Sundays. There's, you deserve this. But when it
Yes.
comes to the reality of your financial um, you know, environment, your credit score. Like, what does that really mean when it
Mhm.
is you're like, okay, so Carnival's here, you only live once. What's the real cost of waiting until last minute to figure out your financial situation?
Right. So that's a beautiful question because at the end of the day, let's go back to the vacation. You don't, for most of us, we don't decide today for next week that we're going on vacation. We don't. We plan that vacation well in advance. And the same thing has to apply to Carnival. And I am all for people participating in the Carnival, going to the shows, supporting the Calypso tents, going to Panorama, playing mass, buying whether it's you take that music online or you actually purchase a CD. I don't know how many people are doing CDs anymore, but whatever. Wherever you get your music from to support the artists and to support the culture. I am very much in favor of that because that feeds into the economy. All right. So great stuff. But at the end of the day, I have to plan in advance. I spoke with one friend of mine who had told me that he budgets every year for how much money he intends to spend. No, he doesn't know what he's going to spend it on, but he says, Chris, I make up my mind how much money I'm going to spend on Carnival, how much money I can afford to spend on Carnival. And again, that comes back to segmenting the income population. So, for example, you have the very highest income earners, then you have middle earners, then you have low middle income, and then you have, of course, low income earners. So everybody will determine how much they can spend on Carnival. And what he says is he's been using a budget of $10,000. And so from the minute Carnival finishes to the following year, he starts putting away from his income 12 into 10,000. Well, it might be 11, 10 or 11 into 10,000, right? Which is $1,000 a month that he puts aside for his Carnival expenditure. Other persons may decide that they can't afford to do that, but they will take a loan, either from a bank, a short loan, 12 months, on favorable terms that they can easily afford. And if they have a good relationship with their banker, they will be able to go in and negotiate that. They could go to the credit unions. The credit unions have special loans for Carnival. And then finally, of course, you can look at your credit card, depending on how much you have on your card. Okay, what's your limit on the card? And making sure that your card is not maxed out. All right. So everybody will approach it with a different sort of mindset. And each one of those opportunities for financing Carnival is determined by which is best for you at the end of the day. It has to be what is in your best interest. Now, let me say, if you do a rough sort of take on Carnival, you can segment it into different things. You have cooler fets, that is 300-400 plus whatever you're going to spend on your drinks. Then you have the all inclusives. and the all-inclusives are ranked according to, which ones are the most popular. So you have the big fets between $1,500 and $2,000 for a ticket. And then you have the $1,000 all-inclusives, right? Then you have panorama. Then you have mass. Average mass costume is about what? $7,000. So when you look at somebody who's a true carnival goer, and I think that's the audience we're speaking to, not the people who might go to one show or one fete, right? Which is a very, very limited expenditure. But the real carnival goers who want to enjoy, as you said, enjoy the fetes, you're talking between 10 and 15,000. And then at the highest level, between 15 to 20, some reaching upwards of 25,000 for the season. So how am I going to manage that expenditure? What is the best way for me to use my resources to pay for that without putting me in financial difficulties down the road?
And I think there's so much for us to cover here, especially since we have a question from YouTube and Michelle. But before we do that, we're going to go on a quick break. Before we go on that break, I want to preview Christopher for the upcoming questions, because this loan conversation on Carnival could be a little controversial. So I'm not sure if Christopher's ready for what's ahead. So we have some questions to ask him right after the break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Tired of feeling lost when it comes to your money? Want to make your money work more for you? Then tune in to Straight Off the Bat, brought to you by the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Every Monday at 8:30 p.m. on TV6, right after the news. We'll give you practical tools and strategies to help you manage your money wisely, from budgeting basics, debt management, to wealth creation. We'll cover it all. No jargon, just straight talk. Join our host, Pauline Joseph, as she speaks to experts across the industry to empower you to take control of your money. Straight Off the Bat, Mondays at 8:30 p.m. on TV6. Brought to you by the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Hi, and welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're doing so from YouTube, like Michelle, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. Today, we're covering the topic budgeting for the Bacchanal, which is Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, and specifically 2026. Our guest today is Christopher Gouveia. He is currently the Managing Director of Diamond Insurance Services Limited at Sagicor Life Insurance in Trinidad and Tobago. So before the break, we were having a robust conversation around this conversation with Carnival and financing and budgeting. And I do have some questions, but before I do that, I want to head over to YouTube. Let's bring back in Christopher. And we have Michelle on YouTube wanting to know, because this is a conversation we had previously, isn't TransUnion report same as the credit report? I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, and if you can answer that question. Thanks for that, Christopher.
Yes, it is, because I didn't want to get into calling names and that kind of thing, but Michelle is correct. TransUnion, right, where your debt servicing information is collected, which is the form that I was referring to earlier, that the financial institution will get you to sign, saying that they are able to collect your information on how you service your debt.
I'm on mute there. Yes. Well, thank you so much to Michelle for that question, because I learned something today on that as well. That's interesting to know. So just before the break, we were discussing, loans being taken out specifically for Carnival, and it could be a very controversial conversation, especially with an upbringing. I can't speak for everybody, but for me, that was something that was, it was like, that's not something you want to be part of. And then you read articles where people like Beyonce are taking out a mortgage. So
Yes.
when it comes to taking out loans using your credit cards for Carnival, how can we manage this debt responsibly? Because I didn't grow up with that conversation. So can you teach us, Christopher?
Okay. All right. So I am very much like you when it comes to that. Grew up in a home where your parents would tell you, if you can't afford it, leave it. Debt is not in your best interest. Stay away from debt. And many of us grew up with parents who told us that kind of thing. But as the world advanced and we became adults ourselves, we realized that in order to achieve certain things, we have to incur debt. There's no way we're going to be able to buy a home, outfit the home, purchase a car, go on vacations annually or every 2 years, whichever you decide, by simply saving money for those events and spending it. If that is the case, based on average incomes in Trinidad and Tobago, people would not be able to do those things for 15 or 20 years. So debt, or as we were speaking earlier, leverage, allows us to be able to have access to those things that make our lives so much more comfortable and so much more enjoyable, and be able to easily finance those over a period of time. So you get a mortgage that goes for 30 years. You get a car loan that goes for 7 years. You get a vacation loan that goes for 2 or 3 years from whatever financial institution you decide you're going to take it. Some of us have funds that we accumulate over the years that can be used for those things. And in financial planning, one of the things that we always encourage our clients to do, all really good financial advisors, is to segment your savings. In other words, don't be like the government with a consolidated fund from which you're going to draw down from that fund to do everything. Have your savings segmented. So this is for vacation. This is for the children's education. This is for the down payment on the house, and whatever else your particular needs are, because we're all different, Pauline. We all have different desires, different things that are important to us that we want to achieve. And so therefore, segmenting helps us to manage our finances in a responsible way. So debt comes in there. And again, as long as we are within what I believe the banks call our debt servicing ratio, and the other lending institutions refer to it as well, as long as we are within our debt servicing ratio, it means that tells us that we are going to be able to comfortably pay our loans and still have enough left over from our disposable income to do the other things that we need to do. Buy the food, put the gas in the car, pay the cable bill, pay the light bill, have some money to go on the avenue or wherever your particular hangout is, in whatever part of the country you are. So you are able, with a good financial advisor, to sit down and say, right, this is what these funds are for. And once you have the requisite discipline to stay with that, you're going to be able to comfortably deal with all of it. So I think we're no longer in that era where everybody looks at debt as a bad thing. It's not, right? And in fact, even the companies do it, right? The companies don't spend all their capital or their retained earnings on buying things, they would go to a financial institution and they will borrow and they would pay out of their income, right? So that's how we all should be operating in this modern world.
It's so interesting that you mentioned, we all have different needs, and everything, like, fun for people mean different things, right? Because
Yes,
a lot of people
yes.
are like, I'm not into carnival. Are you even really from Trinidad? Um, personally, I spend way too much money on bicycles. The concept of taking all over a bicycle, people are like, what? But I say, you know what? A bicycle is cheaper than heart surgery. And that I'm maintaining that story. Okay.
Prevention is better than cure.
Thank you. So we were mentioning earlier about this conversation around debt and what the, I guess, older folks, your generation, not mine. So when it comes to this relationship with money, a lot of us adopt what, our parents would have
Yes, yeah,
put upon us.
yeah.
But when it comes to young professionals, who are now in a position to be first-time carnival goers,
Yes,
you might get very excited and like, I want to be this, I want to be that. What are some smart tips you can share for someone watching this, that
yes,
can build habits that will allow them not to survive the carnival season alone, but afterwards?
yes. And that's a great question because I have 4 young professionals in my household, right? All university trained, and they are all beginning now to have their own money and make their own decisions, and very quick to tell me, Daddy, there's a different time. So, so when you want to rush to protect them and just tell them about, save and save and save, they not going to always listen to that. But they've taken what is the good advice from it. So for the young professionals, I would say, particularly, again, everybody's situation is different. And financial planning, if there's one thing you're going to learn as a financial planner, is that there is no one size fits all approach. None. If you are doing that with your clients, you're doing a disservice. Everybody's situation is different. You have so many young professionals who are still living at home. They haven't gone out on their own as yet. This is not America, where after university they kick you out. Go and make your living. In our culture, stay home as long as you want. Okay? You always have a home here and that kind of thing. We've heard our parents say. So you may be a young professional earning $15,000 a month, 15 to 20,000, paying your taxes, and with all your tax reduction sort of strategies that you can put in there. Also, you may be contributing to the home, but for the most part, the lion's share of your disposable income is available to you. It's not committed out to anything. Okay, so you might have bought a car, but that's manageable because you're getting your cars without a major down payment. All right. And so the monthly installment is very manageable. In a case like that, you don't want to go and spend just because you have the money, blow it on having a good time. Carnival is wonderful, but you still have to, as you rightly said, think about the future in terms of your finances going forward. So you've got to, again, come back to that word that so many people don't like to hear, but it's a fact. Budget. You've got to budget. How much do I want to spend on the carnival? All right. And once you've made that decision, you can now decide how you're going to finance it. Some of them have credit cards. The credit card limit for a young professional may not be the highest limit, but it's still reasonable. They have access to the banks. They have access to credit unions. They have access to wherever they have savings, whether it's a unit trust or they have it on their insurance policy or they have it wherever they have funds. And they are able now to determine where's the best place to pull those funds from without incurring too heavy a debt penalty in terms of interest going forward. So you've got to crunch your numbers at the end of the day. You have to.
Solid advice, and kudos to you for still housing them youths and them. I just jealous at this point.
No, they're threatening to leave. They're threatening to leave because 2:00 in the morning you send out a call. Where are you? We done cool it, so you still, the old thing. You can't sleep until they come home, and so yeah, it's time to leave the nest, so I could sleep when the night comes.
Sounds like a loving home. So we're gonna go on a break. But before we do, we have to make sure and let Christopher know what's coming. We're gonna have the difficult conversation around who should probably think twice before borrowing for Carnival. So we'll answer that question on the way back. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're like Janice, she's joining us from LinkedIn. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. Today, we're covering the topic budgeting for the Bacchanal, which is Trinidad Carnival. Our guest today is Christopher Gouveia. He has a Bachelor's of Arts degree as well in social sciences and an MBA in finance. So we're going to squeeze out as much information as possible. And if you're watching this now live, don't forget you could slide into the comments across social media to ask Christopher any questions you have. We will try to answer it as soon as possible. So just before the break, we were discussing, we're going to bring back Christopher. We're discussing, what we're looking at in terms of budgeting our finances as a young person, a young professional. But some of us may not fall into the category of taking on a loan. So let's have this difficult discussion of, when does credit cards and loans, when is that not necessarily the best way forward? When should someone think twice before borrowing for Carnival?
Right. So again, that's a fantastic question. And before I get into answering it, I just wanted to say something that I should have said before when we were discussing what the cost of Carnival is. We were speaking about individuals assessing the cost to them for Carnival, budgeting, which includes a number of things which we haven't even really gotten into discussing. Your outfits. Women will not wear the same outfit to fetes, not even the same outfit they wore last year, right? And rightly so, right? We haven't spoken about the cost of transportation. We haven't spoken about a number of different things. But more so, what we didn't talk about is when one of the partners in a relationship has to pay for two, whether it's the man or the woman, who's the real income earner there. You have to double the expenditure for Carnival. And in fact, I was talking to a client yesterday, and he was he was saying the very same thing. He said, everything that I spend on Carnival is by two, right? And I said, so your partner isn't working? And he said, yes, but that's my responsibility. So depending again on the nature of the relationship, some people are independent and they don't want anybody paying for them. They're going to handle their own expenditures. So let's come back now to when is it not useful to borrow to finance Carnival? Of course, the starting point is, what is your limit? Whether it's your credit card, or have you spoken to your credit union? Credit unions give you 3 times your shares as the amount that you can borrow. I saw some credit unions now giving a loan that is not specific. It's for anything at all, right? And they have some pretty high ceilings. But again, you now have to qualify for that. So in terms of the loans, you may want a loan to finance your Carnival, but you're not able to based on where your debt servicing ratio is right now. So if you have a car installment and a mortgage, and you have some other smaller loans that you're paying in other financial institutions, taking a loan to fund the Carnival may not be in your best interest. Maxing out your credit card may not be in your best interest if you know that your credit card is used for other things during the course of the year, right? So you have to, again, know your situation, where I may be in a position where I can easily take a loan and pay it off in 10 or 12 months, as opposed to someone else who cannot get another loan or may not be able to get the amount that they want for Carnival. So they may have to now look at other sources of funding for the Bacchanal. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier is a friend of mine who says that he puts aside a certain amount of money every month for spending on the Carnival. Now, let's say he has 10,000 every year from his savings for Carnival, but that doesn't cover all the intended expenditures. He may only have to borrow or use from his credit card, let's say $3,000 to $5,000, which is a lot more manageable than having to take your credit card to spend $15,000 on purchasing tickets, buying costumes, buying outfits, paying for drinks, and whatever else constitutes your expenditure on the Carnival. So you have to really know yourself and know what your situation is, because going forward, those other bills are not going away. They're going to be there after the Carnival.
Yeah, that's a truth that a lot of us need to hear, I guess, externally, because there's always this hope in our mind. Yeah, we'll eventually pay it off, but I think being honest with ourselves is so important. And speaking of being honest with ourselves, Michelle has a question from YouTube. Shouldn't we review our budgets monthly, especially in these changing economic climate?
Well, certainly, I have no objection to reviewing your budgets monthly. In fact, but what I would say is, you know what your major expenses are for a year 2026. At the start of 2026, I sat down and wrote out what were my committed expenditures that I have to continue funding for the year. So what my loans, the other things that I am committed to, the mortgage, the cable, the food, the installment on the vehicle, everything. You write it out, because those are not going to change month to month. So those are going to be there. What is going to change, Michelle, is the seasonal expenditures that are going to come upon us. So I spoke to Christmas. Christmas is a seasonal expenditure. And so you may have spent, and sometimes some people overspend for Christmas holiday season. So you know now, as you rightly says, you've got to now manage monthly going forward if you exceeded your budget for the holiday season. And the same thing applies to Carnival. And as Pauline suggested earlier, not everybody partakes in the Carnival. Some people go on vacation. So they too have to manage that expenditure during the Carnival season, even though it's not directly related to participating in the Carnival. So that is clear. And so I agree with you. Monthly analysis or assessment of your expenditures is quite useful, and would help you to stay on track, so that if you know in any particular month something came up, for example, we're in the midst of the Carnival season and you're having a great time, and your car chooses the Carnival season to give you problems, where you have to do major repairs on your vehicle. That was an unexpected expense that you are now faced with, on top of the expenditures that you've already committed to for Carnival. So now you're going to be faced with a choice. Either you're going to go through with your Carnival expenditures and try to fund this new expense that you have with your vehicle by taking a loan, maybe using your credit card, pulling from savings that you have somewhere, to now manage this unexpected expense which has come upon you while you are in the midst of enjoying the revelry in Carnival. So agreed, monthly, but you ought to have a long-term and annual look perspective on your expenditures so that you can budget appropriately.
Some great advice, and you did mention before as well, where you have a friend who assigned a specific total,
Yes.
which could be easier for some people, that everybody wants to, set aside that monthly time. So assigning a specific budget is a fantastic way that you mentioned earlier. So we're going to shift the topic a little bit. But before we do, we actually have to go on a break.
Okay.
So before we do, I like to preview with the question ahead. With all the revelry, the excitement, people visiting, sometimes we can overspend. So we want to ask Christopher to give us some advice on how we're going to get back into reality and get back into track when we are in that situation where like, I may have gone over my budget. What next?
Yes.
So we'll answer that question on the way back. We'll be right back. welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're doing so from Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. Today, we are covering the topic budgeting for the Bacchanal Trinidad Carnival. Specifically, we're in 2026. It's so interesting and weird to say that. But yes, we're in 2026. And our guest today is Christopher Gouveia. He is currently the Managing Director of Diamond Insurance Services Limited at Sagicor Life Insurance, Trinidad and Tobago. So we're going to welcome him back in. We've been having such a great conversation around a timely topic, which is money and carnival. You know, one kind of goes with the other.
Yes.
So when it comes to this conversation, we've spoken about budgeting, we've spoken about, you know, choosing where we're going to go, the fets we're going to go. But the reality is we are human. And things happen. You
Yes.
make plans, and then, you know, somewhere along the way, you found yourself in a fete that you said you would never go to again, but your friend was like, we have to go to it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to managing Carnival, overspending can be part of that journey. So
Yes.
give us some insight on a solid recovery strategy to get back on track, you know, if we fall into this overspending case.
Yes. And again, another fantastic question and a reality, because with all the best intentions in the world, we may say our budget for Carnival is $15,000, $10,000 to $15,000. And I'm speaking here to the real Carnival goer. Somebody may be looking at this and say, well, this man crazy, or who's spending $15,000 on Carnival? There are many people who do, okay? And that's the reality. If you add up all the fetes and the shows and the outfits and the masks and the panorama, and $15,000, between $10,000 and $15,000 easily. So with all the good intentions in the world, we are social animals. We have a crew, we have a crowd that we move with, and I may not have planned to go to a particular big show, but everybody is going and they put pressure on me to attend. Come now, man, you will enjoy yourself. And you decide, look, you only live once, you know, let me go. And so that takes you there over your budget. Sometimes going over budget may not be a major issue, because you may have the funds available to cover that additional expense. However, the problem comes up when you don't have those funds and you have to access it from somewhere, which means that you need to get financing for that extra expenditure that you're going to incur, whether it's going to be from your credit card, which most likely will be where you're going to take it from. You're not going to go and get a loan for $5,000 in the heat of the Carnival, all right? So you're going to probably take it from your credit card. Okay, so now going forward, you have a choice. Oh, by the way, let me say something. I saw something interesting where the banks are saying that if you're going to be using your credit card for Carnival expenditure, instead of having to pay it off in 1 month so that you don't incur interest going forward by simply just paying your minimum balance, they can spread it over a 3-month period. You have to select that. You have to actually select that. I don't know the actual process because I haven't done it, but the bank's offering it. So it means that you have to go in and say, well, listen, I intend to use my credit card to spend, let's call a figure, $10,000 over the Carnival season, and they will give you 3 months to pay that off without the additional interest attached to that. So that's an option. I just said I would stick that in because I saw it while reading up on some other stuff. Right, so now if you are over budget, You now have to rein in your expenditures. Obviously, you cannot rein in your mortgage or your rent or your car installment or your cable or your electricity. The standard expenses cannot be reined in. That's where we go back to the whole issue about your credit score and all that kind of thing. You have to keep paying those. So to recover, you now have to go to the discretionary expenses. So every Friday, I'm on the avenue spending $500. Okay, I can't do that. At least not for going forward, maybe the next 2 or 3 months. I'm not going to be able to go every Friday. I might go 1 or 2 Fridays for the month. So the discretionary expenses, I normally buy food when I go to work during the week, and that costs me an average of $50 a day buying food. That 5 days a week, that's $250. By 4 weeks, that's $1,000 for the month. I'm going to cook and carry food for next month. So these are different approaches to how we can rein back when we have overspent, what we need to do to adjust. And the adjustment is going to take place in the discretionary expenditures. And that would be my advice to a client of mine if he or she came to me and said, listen, I think I spent too much on Carnival. What would you suggest to me going forward? We'll take a look at everything that he or she spends money on, and then we'll identify the discretionary expenditures where we can cut back.
Solid advice, Christopher. Thank you so much. So we're coming down, we're almost to a close, and I want to reference, yes, I know, there's so much to cover here. Yeah. But we need to reference something that I found online when it comes to, in Trinidad and Tobago, what people are searching for on Google. And savings is one of the biggest thing that people have searched for. And when it comes to Carnival, you know, we joke and say you start for Carnival when the day, like Carnival Tuesdays, when you're preparing for Carnival next year, right?
Correct.
And we've seen it with band launches getting earlier and earlier. And when it comes to building a small Carnival fund, what advice would you give to somebody watching this?
Well, let me, by the way, I understand that Carnival next year is the first week of February.
What?
Yes, you could check it. You could check it, but I was told that
Christmas no longer exists.
Exactly. Paul, you took the words out of my mouth. That is exactly what I said. I said, well, so much for Christmas 2026. You know, they're going to override Christmas. So the Bacchanal will start in November, December, January. So I have to confirm that too. Right. So when we look at planning for Carnival next year, 2027, and we come back to, okay, I'm going to put aside funds for this. We're talking disposable income here. Discretionary expenditures. The monies that I spend month to month. And recently I told a client of mine who was having struggles with his monthly expenditures. I told him, write down for me. And I told him to start in the second week of January and go all the way through February. Every single day, write down what you spend your money on. Every single thing. Write it down, because the mind is such that we are not going to remember in the end of February what we spent money on in the final week of January. We're not going to remember that. That's impossible, right? So I told him, write it down every day. Keep a track of it. And we're going to look at what you are spending your money on. How much money you're spending on doubles. How often do you eat doubles? Is it 5 days a week? Do you eat doubles only on the weekend? That kind of thing. Where do you eat for lunch? Are you going in the most expensive places to get lunch? Can't you take breakfast or lunch to work or whatever it is? So these are the things that are going to inform how much money you can put aside on a monthly basis to be able to save for Carnival next year, right? And as I told you, my friend says that he can afford to put anywhere between $900 to $1,000 every month into a savings account for Carnival. And that's not going to impact his lifestyle for that month. He has the ability to do that, right? Now, as I alluded earlier when I was answering Michelle's question, I said, but there are times when unexpected expenditures will show up. And when that happens, again, that's where, as Michelle was saying, the monthly adjustment has to come in for the budget. So that would be my advice. Look at your situation, determine how much you can comfortably put aside that is not going to impact your lifestyle in a major way, and start saving. Start saving.
So we have exactly 2 minutes. So you have to answer this question real quickly. So there's a general consensus, it's like, why are you spending this money? This doesn't make any sense. And it just doesn't apply to Carnival. It's anything that somebody may not understand.
Yes.
What advice would you give to that person who may feel guilty, although they're in a financial position to enjoy themselves? What advice would you give to that person if they feel some type of way to spend money on themselves?
I would tell them, continue to spend money on yourself, as long as it is not something that is going to hurt you or something that is going to affect you negatively. This is your life. This is your life. I unabashedly spend money on Manchester United. I don't care. People could say what they want. I love the club. I spend my money. I enjoy my Manchester United jerseys and whatever else I get from them, shows and everything. You enjoy Carnival. You can reasonably and comfortably, and as an adult, determine that this is my money. I experience great enjoyment from the Carnival. And so I want to spend money on it. Go ahead. Go ahead. Don't let anybody make you feel guilty telling you that's a waste of time. What do you have for show for it at the end of the day? You have your financial and mental stability and your health, your mental health, because you've relieved the stress that we are all living in a very stressful environment. So I would say, Pauline, go ahead and spend your money on your bikes and enjoying your bike rides.
Thank you so much. And as a former Chelsea supporter, I may judge you a little bit, but at the same time, that's not going to take away quality advice.
I noted you said former, and that's good.
Yeah. Good pickup. So thank you so much, Christopher Gouveia, for joining us today and sharing insight into budgeting for Bacchanal, budgeting for the Bacchanal, that is Trinidad Carnival. And I must confirm, yes, Carnival 2027 is going to be much earlier. So you may want to save this video and replay it somewhere around August, September, or maybe like July, August, because you're going to need to start prepping for that budgeting and making sure you have your savings. So don't forget to sign up to be notified for our next live show via the link in the comments somewhere, depending on where you're watching this. As always, be sure to like and follow pages across social media so you don't miss a single live show. And thanks again for joining us at the start of 2026. Looking forward to seeing you again. Goodbye.